This is The Healthy Healer, where true voice is your medicine. This is where we help doctors and other healers navigate through the challenging times by learning from the best minds in the healing industry. Laugh, cry, and be surprised. It's entertainment, education, and inspiration so you can continue to be the unique and amazing healer you were destined to be. Welcome to humanity. Welcome to The Healthy Healer with Dr. Fred.
Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Fred, and welcome back to The Healthy Healer. It's really great to have you here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for taking the time. I realize you could be doing a million different things besides this. And for whatever reason, you have decided to click this on and listen to what I have to say and what my wonderful guest has to say today. Looking for something that will alter your life in a positive direction and perhaps to create some degree of inspiration, some degree of education, or some degree of entertainment that actually makes it worth it to have listened to and to have watched what you have in front of you right this very minute. So in order to get that done, I've decided to make it a slam dunk. And today we're going to interview someone who actually has never, ever been interviewed as a guest, but has in fact been on her own podcast. And the opportunity here is to really open up the gates for Holly Beck and have her spotlighted so that we can see how wonderful she is and what kind of work she's done and the path that she's taken to get to be the amazing healer that she has become over time. So Holly has been the epitome of what it really means, the poster child of what it really means to be a healthy healer. And it's a great opportunity, a privilege, and an honor to introduce you, my listeners, to our guest today, Holly Beck. Holly, thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm so excited to be here, and I hope I live up to the introduction.
Oh yeah, you definitely will. And here's what we got first. So we're going to get a little bit of the ice broken a little bit. And the way we do that is we start off with a simple question. It's a 9-letter question. It's a question that it's 9 total letters, and it's grammatically correct, and it's very powerful, and sometimes leaves my listeners back on their heels, even though it is such a short question. But here we go anyways, Holly. Are you ready? Here we go. It's called, Holly Beck, who are you?
Oh boy, how long do you have?
We got a few minutes, and it's an opportunity to really dig in. You can be really complicated if you want, or you can answer this any way you want to actually make the kind of difference you want to make. Who are you really?
I think the answer to that is always evolving because
That's
I
the
feel
truth.
like I get to know myself a little bit more as each week passes and with each client that I work with each new exposure to new healing modalities, to new people. Like having you on my podcast was really impactful for me as well as a listener to your story. And so yeah, I think my my general answer is that's always evolving, but who I know myself to be currently is someone who has gone on a 20-year journey at this point
Hmm.
of working on healing my own health. My story with health began, I should say, obviously began 20 years ago when I was diagnosed with mono. I came down with mono pretty severely, knocked me out of work for a month and a half, and my throat was swollen out to my jawline, and it was pretty gnarly. And getting mono in your 20s tends to be a bit more complicated than when you get it as a kid. Lucky me, I got it then. And after the mono technically went away, I never really got better. It spun into just chronic fatigue and getting sick all the time, just really always feeling run down. And I kept going to the doctor, and basically, they finally said, "We think you have chronic fatigue. It will probably go away in 2 years."
2 years.
2 years. Yeah, that's what
Wow.
they told me.
What a
And it was quickly apparent to me that just meant they had no idea how to help me or what to
Yeah.
do with me because nothing was showing up in my blood work. And so I went on this really long, meandering path of trying different health modalities, different alternative healing practitioners, and also just trying to still pretend like I was a normal 20 something year old that could still go out and party and have a quote unquote normal active life. And And my body kept trying to tell me, like, no, you can't really do that. Not so easily, not as easily as everybody else. You can do it for a time, but it's going to catch up with you. And I've had to learn that lesson over and over and over and over, along with many other people in the chronic health space. And anyhow, this basically led me on this path of alternative routes of healing. And I eventually turned into or went to study as an herbalist. And that blew my mind open to so many more possibilities than I ever knew were there before. And I started incorporating all the things I learned into my life. And I would say that it helped. But even still, I was struggling, and that went on for years. Eventually, I ended up with another health diagnosis of lupus, which is an autoimmune condition. This is a long, drawn out way of trying to tell you who I am, but I eventually came to this space in my life. This is just before the lupus diagnosis, so roughly 2017 or 2018. And I was finding that I just felt really lost. I didn't really know, I couldn't figure out my direction in life. Yes, I loved being an herbalist, but I was working at a pharmacy with vitamins and supplements, and that wasn't paying my bills. I was in the restaurant industry, and that was paying bills pretty decently, but it wasn't what I wanted to do with my life, and I didn't really know what else to do. I was in this lost world of finding my way. I was in a long-term relationship, and yes, we are still together. Things went well, but and are going well, but I wasn't quite sure at the time where that was leading as well. My boyfriend was in the same state of not quite having a strict direction in his life either, and I just felt like I was like paddling or treading water, I guess they say.
Okay. Mhm.
And then we went on a trip to visit some friends in Kauai, which sounds like it would be amazing. And it was. We had a great time. But I noticed that I felt physically very well in Kauai. Like I didn't feel as much of a health burden on my body. I wasn't run down. I was just feeling really good. And as we were flying back to San Diego, a place where I've always been really happy to fly back to, I felt this sort of depression set on me.
Mm.
And I couldn't shake it. It didn't go away. And I
Yeah.
think it was because I knew I was coming back to still not knowing what I was doing with my life. Kauai was a
Yeah.
distraction, and
Sure.
now here I was. And I came to realize that I was missing a sense of spirituality in my life and some sort of other connection. And
Okay.
I would say that is where I started to really tap into who I am and my potential in life and what life could really be like. And that's really where things started turning around for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's quite a long ride, and we have a lot of different peaks and valleys that you're talking about. They're mostly
Yeah.
valleys. We have the first issue of a blasting case of mononucleosis early on that left you pretty devastated from a physical standpoint and pretty desperate looking for help, and then going up the main street to actually get the help where you thought it was probably existent inside of regular standard conventional medicine allopathically, and having that fail so drastically while you then looked for alternatives as a direct result of hearing something like, yeah, it's going to be about 2 years, when that just sounded like a bunch of bunk. And it is a bunch of bunk. They know nothing what they're saying when they say it's going to be 2 years. And so off you went, searching around underneath, picking up stones and seeing what's underneath there, and getting to the new possibility of many different alternative, or let's say non-conventional approaches to taking on viruses such as the chronic fatigue virus, or maybe the Epstein-Barr variant that you actually were dealing with. And how this all manifested as it eventually continued to be difficulty, even though you were an herbalist. So even though you had learned so much about what Mother Nature has to say about these imbalances, these chronic imbalances, and how we get tired or stop growing or fall into pain or fall into suffering or fall into malaise or lethargy, which certainly is the case inside of the affliction that you had, both with mono and along the next case, certainly with its extension, which eventually got diagnosed as a chronic fatigue or something along those lines, which goes with a lot of different conditions. Ultimately, there's a lot of conditions of fibromyalgia, et cetera, that are often given the same source and mistaken, or at least also diagnosed as those other conditions. It's a very tiring, exhausting position that you had. And even as an herbalist, although you were really turned on by what you were learning as an herbalist, there you were working a job that didn't necessarily take into consideration everything you knew about what Mother Nature and maybe what the cosmos had to offer for cures and remedies, as you were still working in a formal pharmacy at that point. And beyond the pharmacy, there we go, and we get another condition which may or may not be directly associated with your chronic fighting of all these other conditions. This whole idea of another very vague and nebulous condition that looks at cells and then describes them in such a way to give lupus erythematosus a name. And you now have what is then a autoimmune disease that you're being told that your body is fighting your body, which is really an odd experience for certain. That would even happen to any human. That's a very difficult one to metabolize. And there you were actually dealing with all that. And of course, it left you lost and disoriented. And luckily, you were in this relationship, and congratulations for getting through that time and getting till now and having it work well. But you were lost and disoriented. What is it you're supposed to do with this life of yours, with all the suffering and the pain that you have, as well as the interest in making a big difference in the world as a human and as a healer? What else are you supposed to do? And lo and behold, what happens is that the divinity or some degree of spirituality falls into your lap, or you find it. When the student's ready, the teacher will come, and there you go, falling into some degree of spirituality that you say is probably the most important turning point of this whole journey. And that just took place not so long ago, actually, as recently as 5 years ago, when you really began to take on the spiritual aspect of this life of yours and were able to incorporate that as a healer for real. What is it that you now bring isn't just healing you, but healing other people. Is that a fair assessment of what you were saying, by the way?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And as you're repeating it back to me, I'm connecting more dots that I'd like to share,
Sure.
which is interesting. So this happened twice at the beginning when I got diagnosed with mono, and further down the road in the Kauai situation. So leading up to when I said initially that my health story began 20 years ago with a mono diagnosis, I said that was the noticeable start of it,
Right.
right? So it really started, years prior with me being very not having a lot of confidence in myself as a young person and leading into adulthood. And I ended up in a relationship that was not positive, we'll say.
Okay.
Definitely a destructive relationship. And I had finally just gotten out of that relationship and felt like I had gotten my life back and I was ready to be on my 2 feet and have friends again and have a life again. And that was when I got smacked with mono. And even then, before I really had any kind of understanding of energy or spiritual sense, like I knew it was related. I just couldn't tell you how
Sure.
yet. And then when we were in Kauai and I had that depressive state coming on, the I believe that the lupus was actually triggered then. Lupus can often be triggered by the sun and heat. And I got a little bit sunburned on my scalp, and it turned into an issue with my scalp and going to the dermatologist and all these things that led to the lupus diagnosis. It turns out that was what I think triggered the lupus diagnosis and experience. So it doesn't mean it wasn't under the surface, but that was the trigger. So both times I was in this really highly emotional and depressive and unsure of my footing, the state. And then these two things happened.
Hmm.
And so moving forward with the spirituality, you said when the student's ready, the door opens or the door appears. It wasn't I think, too long after we got back from Kauai. And once I realized it was the spirituality aspect that I was missing, just lo and behold, popping up on my Facebook feed, this spiritual center that's close to me, who I'd never even heard of before, popped up with a speaker that they were going to be having for a monthly series for the year. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I don't know why, but I feel like I need to go to this. And Jacob Glass was the speaker, and he ended up being, I consider him my spiritual mentor, even though we never worked one on one together. I learned so much from him. And it was there that I started learning about mindset and how powerful mindset is. And that aspect of the spirituality, aside from just connecting with a higher power, that my teaching and mindset is what completely changed the trajectory of my health and my life.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so say a little more about what you learned about mindset and how does that apply day to day now with you being a healer, or you even having at least your feet on a more solid ground as you walk your life forward.
Sure. And I'll caveat this by saying just because I'm very well aware of my mindset day to day doesn't mean I'm not human and I don't have bad days, right?
Yeah.
Standard operating procedure. We just now have better tools in our toolbox to manage these things, right? And recognize what's going on. Let's see. I would say the first shock to me, or the first reality hit with mindset, was that we choose our reality.
It's really
I
a
mean,
fascinating, it's a fascinating experience to get that you're the author of your life, isn't it?
exactly. And that we, like, all these thoughts that I used to have that I thought were very factual, such as I'm not qualified to do X, Y, or Z. I don't know enough. I'm not smart enough. I've never been trained in this. Therefore, I can't follow that path. Those were a lot of the thoughts that I had as far as being very unsure of where I was going with my life, right? I thought I was basically only good for retail. And when I realized that maybe what I was telling myself was factual, or realistic, actually wasn't. That was just what I had trained myself to believe. And then I
Right.
started learning about neuroplasticity, and that we can actually change. We can, once we can catch those thought patterns and recognize those thought patterns, we can actually take steps to shift those thought patterns so that they don't just play over and over in our heads, convincing us of this false reality.
Hmm. And so how does that play into your who you get to be these days? This whole idea, and how much, it does it in the world of neuroplasticity, or in growth of development, or in the idea of really exercising those muscles to take on the authorship of your own life. Where do you find yourself now as opposed to even just a couple years ago when you were first coming across this whole notion?
Sure. Even just 6 or 8 months ago, I've shifted so much. I have, I have, there's a process in when, as you go through this, where you start to be comfortable being uncomfortable, asking yourself these questions, questioning, is that reality or is that just what I'm telling myself? And there is a lot of discomfort there because are, you're confronting your own reality, and that can throw the whole balance off, right? Which is what we want to do to move forward. But I basically started training myself to the ideas that I could do things that I originally didn't think I could do, that I could step into different worlds, that I could have the confidence to run my own business, that I could be smart enough to figure out how to create a website or create a coaching program. First, you have to get the idea in your head. And the more mindset work I would do, the more I could actually clarify a vision. Before the mindset stuff, I couldn't clarify a vision as to what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to help people, but how? And so, yeah, it was a process of recognizing my limiting beliefs and learning how to reframe them. And because of that, I've gotten to this point where I am now comfortable being uncomfortable and doing these things that are challenging me, like being on this podcast today
Yeah.
and challenging myself with not knowing where the conversation is going to go and being okay with that and trusting myself to be able to not freeze up and have answers.
That's fantastic. That's really great, and you're doing a wonderful job. So good work on incorporating that mindset of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Tell us a little bit about the coaching program that you have developed, because that's very exciting. Let's hear a little bit more about how this got manifest in the face of really you finding a strength to be able to create a business or create a coaching process and then not only design it but implement it into a coaching program. How does that work?
Sure. I had a coach approach me and talk to me and convinced me that I could be a coach and that I could really help people because I've been through so much.
Yeah.
And this was a couple of years ago. So it still took me quite a little bit of time to really, again, go through that discomfort to get to the point where I was ready to actually believe that I could do this. But also, I had to start before I was fully ready, before I felt fully confident. And that was important. But it has now transitioned into a beautiful space where I can work one on one and in groups with people online. And I am helping other women who are, most are in the chronic health space, but some are just in a space of either recognizing that they need to do mindset work to get to where they want to be in life, or they're being held back by their health struggles. A lot of them are in the chronic space and they want to figure out how to better manage things on their own, because their symptoms and their health on their own, because they're getting answers like I did. Oh, maybe it'll go away in 2 years. Oh, maybe it's in your head. Oh, there's nothing will cure what you have. You're going to be on these pills for the rest of your life. And they're
Yeah.
not willing to settle for that. When I work with people, I take them first through a whole journey of establishing a mindset practice to, again, recognize those limiting beliefs, to help them take radical responsibility for their life of where they are currently, where they want to go, what actions need to happen in order to promote that to come to pass. And not until we've established a solid mindset routine and we do a 30-day journey with this, then once that's established, then we can move into the health fundamentals.
That's
And I
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, I call them the health fundamentals because it's all the stuff that you aren't going to learn at the doctor's office. The Western medical system just isn't designed to teach you how to really take care of yourself. They're designed to help you manage symptoms and, go about things that way. I'm not putting any blame there. That just is the way it's set up. So I help people learn how to actually support their fundamental health by how are we supposed to eat? What's going to work best for you? How are we supposed to manage our circadian rhythm? Let's get you back on track there. We go through hydration. Proper hydration is really important. Clean water is really important. And it's really all basic stuff, but it's stuff that we're not taught.
Right. Very beautiful. And this is called the Health Bridge, right? The Health Bridge
Correct.
podcast and the Health
Yes,
Coaching Program.
correct.
So, what is that? How does a woman find you? What is it? Are they asking their friends or are they listening to your podcast or both? Or how does someone actually trip over learning that Holly Beck is who I want to work with?
Totally. I can't wait till I get to the point where I'm getting all my business based on referrals, but we're still building to that point. So for now, yes, the Health Bridge podcast, I'm almost at my year mark. I've got, I think, 2 more episodes to hit my year, which is really exciting. And also on Instagram is a great way to find me. I have all my links on my Instagram bio to apply for a call with me. I definitely offer free calls for anybody that's interested and think they might be a good fit or just want to learn more.
Hmm.
So Instagram and my podcast.
Cool. And how does this manifest with your relationship, for instance? Where else in the world are you getting that your mindset shift is having a very positive influence on the rest of your life, and not just the management of your chronic symptoms, but how your world is really unfolding away from the dysfunction physically that you may have experienced, so that other
Mhm.
people know what are the other things that can be expected when you shift a mindset.
Sure. Definitely, I would say relationships change, typically for the better. Sometimes when you are growing, other people aren't ready to grow with you. So that is just something to be noted. But luckily for me, the people in my life have seen what I'm doing, and I've, I've actually gotten more respect from family and friends, which I wasn't striving for, but they see changes in the way I hold myself, I think, and speak and carry myself, and my work ethic with building this business. And that's been really interesting to get compliments and things that I wasn't expecting and I
Yeah.
wasn't striving for. But also, I would say I have a better trust in, definitely in a higher power, but just in life in general. Like I'm just not worried as much because I
Yeah.
have a better understanding of how energy flows, and so I don't let myself get caught in fear mode. I don't let myself get caught in worry mode anymore, which I used to spend a lot of time in both of those places. So
Yeah.
just in that, just overall experience of life improves. Along with you or not, life improves.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. And normally, when I hear people talk along those lines, it's something about their relationship with death that actually changes. In some ways, when people are worried or people are fearful, ultimately what they're worried or fearful of is their own demise. And when
Right.
you start to incorporate that's just part of the life cycle, or that's something not to be necessarily concerned about or afraid of, then fear
Mhm.
and worry tend to dissipate. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think so because I don't, partly because I feel more connected to a higher power, to
Right.
I'll say to God. Other people might use different words, but yes, I think because I have more trust and faith in God and in God's plan, that I feel like as long as I'm doing my part, then I can just trust in whatever that ends up looking like.
Exactly, spoken well, and there's a lot of people I've heard who are people of God or people of faith or people of spirituality who reach a similar conclusion or a similar space, and it allows them to take big, giant steps upon reaching that space, like confidently just take strides into the universe and be prepared for what's here and be willing to accept all things. So that's really what I'm hearing. It's fantastic.
Mhm. Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome. So Holly, how you already mentioned how people can find you. What is your goal? And if you had anything to really say to each and every listener, if you had one word or one line of wisdom that you would like to pass along to my listeners, what might that be?
I would say don't give up hope.
Yeah.
Don't give up. Don't give up, because especially if you are in a chronic health experience, it can feel very hopeless. It
Yeah.
comes with a lot of layers,
Yeah.
and you'll be around a lot of people that just don't understand what it is that you're going through and what it is that you're struggling with. It's easy to get stuck in that space, in that hopeless space like I was at that point when I was in Kauai, and just around the corner from that is where I started making breakthroughs. So,
Beautiful.
yeah, just don't give up and don't lose hope.
I love that. Thank you so much. All
Mhm.
right. It's really been an honor and a pleasure to have you here. I hope it wasn't too traumatic to do your first podcast as a guest. I hope we took good care of you and got an opportunity to spotlight what's important to you, to the world. And it's really been a pleasure. You're a wonderful person. Thanks for being exactly who you are and getting all the pieces of life put together as you have them now, which isn't the end of the road. As you see, you have plenty more to grow and plenty more to develop, as I do and as we all do. And welcome to humanity, as I say in one of my podcasts, and that's the name of my company. And so there's an opportunity to really see that we're all going through these changes. We're all going through these difficult, challenging times. We're all facing obstacles and hurdles that have never been defined or described or expected before. And it takes something to actually get up every morning and be creative and step into a world with some degree of courage or some degree of honorability and some degree of grace. And it seems to me like you're really taking steps in that direction. So thank you for being you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a pleasure. And yes, you made it very easy and comfortable for me to share.
Okay, great. Really wonderful. Thanks for my listeners as well. Thanks for listening to The Healthy Healer. Thanks for enjoying this great conversation with my new good friend, Holly Beck. And thanks for stepping in and listening to this point in the show. If you like the show, feel free to share or to comment it's really an opportunity for other people to step in and listen to what they have to hear. And if you like this episode, feel free to share it with a friend. Again, it's Dr. Fred signing off with the Healthy Healer. And of course, we'll catch you on the flip side. Bye for now.